on now a second. There's a pocket in there. And you can turn it. Hello, hello. Put the cushion back in your spot there. Put the cushion back a small bit there. Huh? Would I ask them to take their places?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you're all very, very welcome here on this beautiful evening after a wonderful day to St. Paul's to join us for this part of the weekend celebration of 100 years of marriages and wedding dresses here in St. Paul's. This part of the programme is to take a look at the actual marriage service itself, and the way we do is we step through the full marriage service. We'll stop every now and again and we'll do some commentary on the significance of the history and the origins of some of the things that we take for granted and do every day that we go to the wedding. Some of them have quite a nice history behind them. Can everybody hear me? Now, is that better? But I'm not going to repeat myself. but anyway, you are all welcome. And I suppose if we just look back at where marriages and where weddings started and look at the origin of them, they have evolved through the years, and there's extra bits added, there's extra traditions added that become the norm, and that's what we're just going to have a look at. I suppose, really, to go back, where did it all begin? Well, as hunter-gatherers, we settled down into an agrarian type of a life where we had farms, houses and places like that where we settled down and lived, and we needed a much more structured society. And the first recorded evidence of a marriage ceremony was in 2350 BC in Mesopotamia. That was the first recorded one. Now, all societies and cultures have had marriages and have had weddings down through the years, including pagan societies. Like, it's not just the church thing, it goes right the way back. Some cultures preferred a monogamous relationship, which is what we're used to, one man, one woman. But there were cultures where there were polygamous marriages, where you had one man, numerous wives. And there was one rare one, which was polyandry, which is what one woman had numerous husbands. So I bet you're sorry you missed out on that one, girls. Okay. If we look to the Bible, we find the reference in the Old Testament. And really, as Christians, we interpret Genesis and the creation account as telling the story of when God instituted marriage. And that's what we hold to have taken place when God created Eve, the first woman, after Adam, the first man. And Lord God said, it's not good for a man to be alone. That didn't work out all that well on that occasion, though, did it, girls? Like, I mean, between serpents and temptations and forbidden fruit and here, sure, take a bite, nobody will ever notice. But you got us all throughout, anyhow, out of the garden. That's where that one started. But if you go back then to ancient mythology, Roman and Greek mythology, they all saw the value in a marriage as well. And the gods all got married. Zeus, who was the top god of all the gods, was married 7 times. His favourite wife was actually Hera. And then at that time as well, you had Hymen, who was short for Hymenaeus, who was the Greek god of marriage and the god of the wedding song. And that's where we got the term the hymn from, all the way from Greek. And Hymen was actually believed to be the son of Apollo and a muse called Calliope. And the famous thing about him is that he disappeared on his wedding day. And that's why ever since the tradition of searching for him, and that's why we sing hymns and all of that at a wedding. It's just because he disappeared. We don't want that to happen again, right? So for better or worse, we have marriage as it is today. And it has evolved in lots of ways. Some things have changed, some things have stayed exactly the same. And if we look at the Christian churches, and pause for just for a couple of moments to look at the different traditions across the Christian churches that we would have here in Mountmellick. And one of the things I would say when you look at this is the services and the beliefs are much more similar than they are dissimilar. There's only minor little things that differ across the churches when you look at what each individual church does. But within the Christian churches, there's very little difference in terms of how we treat marriage. What we'll go through today will be the Church of Ireland, or the Anglican Rite. That's the one we will be going through. But we'll just look for a moment. And if you take the Methodist Church, we have a Methodist community here in Mountmellick and always had. Weddings there are seen first and foremost as a service of worship. Okay, and Christian marriage is not a sacrament in the United Methodist Church. But those who choose to marry and enter into a sacred covenant, reflecting the baptismal covenant. Because Methodists believe that baptism marks the beginning of a lifetime of growing as a follower of Christ. And that entering into that covenant with God, and marriage is seen as a reaffirmation of that covenant in the Methodist belief. Many of the elements of a Methodist wedding are exactly the same as what we do here and what all the other Christian churches do. There are some unique aspects, some small ones. One of the things that sets a Methodist wedding apart is that the guests at a wedding, they're not witnesses, they're not expected to be just there for the fun. They're expected to contribute and take part in the marriage service, and they have to actively participate in the actual marriage ceremony. And the other unique thing with a Methodist is that there are no alcoholic beverages served at a Methodist wedding service or at the wedding reception. If we go to the Quakers, right, and we have a long tradition of Quaker community here in Mountmellick, right back in the 1700s, key to the establishment of Mountmellick. But a Quaker wedding, it takes place in the Quaker meeting house, and it starts where all the guests arrive. They enter and they sit in a circle to start their worship. The meeting settles in, starts as a meeting of worship, the bride and groom will arrive in their own time, right? But they arrive together. There is no best man, there's no groomsman, there's no wedding party as such. The bride and groom come into the meeting house and they join the worship for a Quaker wedding. When the couple are ready, then they stand and they will profess their vows in turn, asking for divine assistance in promising to be a loving and faithful spouse. For Quakers, marriage is a commitment made between two people and God. Slightly different in that sense, and the vows reflect that. And after that has happened, then there's the Quakers appoint a registering officer for each meeting, for each prayer meeting, and the registering officer, he will read the Quaker marriage certificate, and the couple will then sign and witness that certificate and continue. And at that point then, anybody who is present, you don't even have to be a Quaker, but anybody that's present can speak. And they generally will speak to offer encouragement to the actual couple, to give them some guidance, promise them their support. Within the Quaker community, speaking at a meeting is considered to be ministry, and it is treated with the utmost respect. Everybody listens in silence. There's a pause afterwards for people to take it in and reflect on it. And nobody interrupts or speaks over anybody at the Quaker meeting. That's something some of our other meeting houses could take on board and maybe improve on if you see it around the place. When the meeting worship comes to a close, everybody present signs the big Quaker marriage certificate, which is quite unique to the Quakers. And even little children who can't write, they can put a mark, they can put an X, or they can put an ink print of their hand or their foot on the actual marriage certificate. So the couple then have that memento of their wedding, where everybody present will have signed the register. In the early days, Quaker marriages weren't legal. Nobody wanted to get married secretly, so that was why that tradition arose, where everybody present signed the marriage certificate, and that then could be used as evidence to either the civil authorities or to anybody else in the community to say, yes, we really were married, and we have a raft of people who can attest to that. And for many people today now, they believe that that's a really, really lovely part of the Quaker service, and it has been continued right up to date. Presbyterian Church, the Presbyterian congregation, they share the same belief in marriage as the other Christian churches. That denomination's governing body, which is the General Assembly, they believe that marriage is a lifelong and loving relationship between one man and one woman that God gives to us with several purposes in mind. So the gift from God carries the weight of being a sacrament. It's in a situation where somebody from the Catholic Church marries a non-baptized Christian, well then the marriage is recognised, but it is not given the status of being a sacrament. And in those cases where somebody from the Catholic Church is marrying somebody from a Christian church that is not a Catholic, they have to get a dispensation from the bishop of the diocese, and it can proceed then. Weddings where both parties are a Catholic, they're ordinarily held in a Catholic church. And where a Catholic person marries a non-Catholic Christian, the marriage can take place in a different church, the Catholic Church. That wasn't the case, but it is the case now, and they just get a dispensation from the bishop of the Catholic diocese to actually do that. And part of the reason why, when we look at the number of marriages, like in the 100 years that we're talking about this weekend, there were 57 marriages here in St. Paul's. And there's a number of reasons why that number is maybe not as big as people might have expected. One of it is that the church here in Mountmellick, St. Paul's, was originally the Church of Ease for Rr-enactment parish. And as Roy has firmly established and scientifically proved, the sun never sets. The sun never sets in Rr-enactment. It rises in Rr-enactment. It goes down in Rr-enactment. And an awful lot of people will choose Rr-enactment Church to have their wedding because it's a wonderful, glorious place up there in Rr-enactment. So there's quite an amount of people who you would have expected to be married here in St. Paul's were married up in Rr-enactment. But the other point is that up to about 30 years ago, if what was called a mixed marriage, if a Catholic married a person from the Church of Ireland, in those circumstances marriage had to take place in the Catholic Church. But that changed, about 30 years ago that changed. But that would have been another point that would have actually reduced the number of marriages that you would have seen here. Okay, so now we get back to the Church of Ireland, which is what we're celebrating here. And the Church of Ireland teaches that marriage is in its purpose a union, permanent and lifelong, for better for worse, till death do them part, of one man with one woman, to the exclusion of all others on either side, for the procreation and nurture of children, for the hallowing and the right direction of natural instincts and affections, and for the mutual society, help and comfort of one that one ought to have for the other, both in prosperity and in adversity. So as we said at the start, the similarities are the same right through. It doesn't matter, if you look at all of the Christian faiths that we have here in Mountmellick, the services, the traditions, the beliefs are almost identical. And I suppose, lads, that means chopping and changing from one church to the other doesn't get you off the hook, because it's actually for better for worse, till death do us part in all churches. Okay, and that's pretty consistent. Now at that stage we still haven't got the bride in yet, and she's another little bit to wait, but we'll get on to her. A lot of the tradition around marriage came in before men and women were treated as equals. Okay? And if you take it, in order to have a wedding dress, you must have a wedding, and in order to have a wedding, you have to have a proposal. So where did that start? Well, back in the day, where it was believed that woman was the property of the man. Now I know girls today and ladies today would not stand for that sort of nonsense, but that was the way for a long time. That was the situation, and the proposal was always made to the bride's father. Okay? And that tradition really goes back to ancient Rome, when the groom would actually give the father of the bride a symbolic coin, and by accepting that coin, the father was given permission for the groom to marry his daughter. Back then the decision was totally up to the bride's father, not the bride. So historically, marriage proposals were more business transactions than actually love affairs. But down through the years, as marriage evolved to be more about love connections, in a way, the concept of the proposal still stays there, and it is still there, and it is considered to be significant. Now, back in those days as well, where the father of the bride made the first move to marry off his daughter, he would have brought a gift to the groom's father. If he was trying to get rid of one of the girls, he went to the groom's father with a gift. And when the value of diamonds came to be recognised and appreciated, that gift was an uncut diamond. Okay? And eventually then, in some cases, to mind that uncut diamond, it was mounted on a ring. So that's where you get to the first engagement ring. But the first engagement ring wasn't given to the bride. It was given to the groom's father. Right? So it was very, very, very much a transaction. Diamond rings really only became popular in about the 17th century. And that was, from then on, they were only available for the upper classes because they were very expensive and ordinary people couldn't really afford them. And it was really in the early part of the 20th century when the diamond merchants, De Beers, they launched a campaign called Diamonds Are Forever. Right? And that popularised diamonds, and it popularised diamonds as engagement rings, and that's why we've been doing it ever since. So it wasn't anything to do with James Bond. Diamonds Are Forever was commercial, it was De Beers, so it was good old commercialism got involved at that point and promoted that. So our bride, our beautiful bride, comes wearing white. All brides are beautiful. We all know that. All brides are beautiful. So now would not be an appropriate time, lads, to throw an eye to one side and look at your wife and say, that would not be an appropriate thing when we say all brides are beautiful. What would be appropriate, and you lads, is just gently reach over, give her hand a little squeeze, and say, darling, you're as beautiful as the day we were first married. Just quiet there, lads. Just anyone that's there. And girls, in response to that, you just might go, ooh. So that might come up at some stage during the service. So at any stage during the evening, if somebody says, the bride is beautiful, all brides are beautiful, lads, just take your chance. Go on, you'll never know where you'll get, right? Just a little squeeze and say, darling. Right, go with that. The other part of tradition, which is around the bride not seeing the groom or the groom not seeing the bride before they were married, and even still that comes true. And on wedding day, the bride and groom don't mix, and that seems like sweet, quaint kind of a tradition that you should do. But its origin is not all that romantic, right? That goes back to the time when parents arranged marriages for their sons and daughters. And in those circumstances, the couple to be married didn't get to see one another on the basis that one might not like the look of the other and would hightail it. So that at those stages, the first time the bride and groom saw one another was when the bride's veil was lifted, when somebody said, I now pronounce you man and wife, and it was far too late to make a run for it at that stage. Yeah? So that brings us on. I'll be back in and out as we go through prattling. If you really get bored with me, you can start shuffling your feet and coughing and stuff like that, and I'll take the hint and move along. But what we will do now, we'll give over to our minister, and our minister will do the opening prayer and the blessing, and then we will have our first hymn, Lead Us Heavenly Father, Lead Us, and bride and groom, bride and her father will come forward, and he will give her away to the groom, and that'll get things going.
Blessed are they who come in the name of the Lord. We bless you from the house of the Lord. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever.
just now that we have the bride and the groom here, if we look back, it's appropriate that we speak of this for a moment because this weekend is very much about the wedding dresses, and you'll notice the majority of the wedding dresses are white. There's one or two coloured ones, but historically, up to about 175 years ago, it wasn't really until 1840 when Queen Victoria married Prince bleaching it, and bleaching was incredibly expensive. So once again, the start of the origin was only with the gentry, with the very, very well off that could actually afford to do that, and that was where it started with Queen Victoria. Mary Queen of Scots, when she married the Dauphin of France in 1558, she wore a white dress as well, but that didn't take off anywhere, and whether it was the fact that communications and press weren't as widespread then, or maybe she just wasn't a romantic soul, but it didn't take off. The other point is the bride traditionally carries a bouquet, carries flowers, and like nowadays we kind of casually assume what flowers mean and where they come from and when you use what flowers.